we are never truly lost. Well, okay, sure, maybe we get turned around for a few days in the woods, where life just feels like it's getting the best of us, and everything's going wrong. And I'm Mike Martin, and I've stood right where you're standing, lost, beaten down, like nothing's ever gonna change. And that's why I built this camp. And that's why I'm inviting you to join me and all the members of this wild community. Because you know what, friend? It does get better. So come along with me into the wild and let me show you this awesome, unique skill set that lays within inside of you. With help from the land, we're gonna unlock the steward that's inside each and every one of us that will lead the way out of the darkness and into healing. Here at the Camp of Healing on Project Mindfully Outdoors. Hey, everybody. Welcome into the show. And because it's Wednesday, we're all going to gather around the campfire for another edition of the Campfire Sessions. And my guest for today, she's an author of the Cancer Comeback series. She's also a very prominent voice in the world of racing, as well as fitness. Her name is Fitz Koehler. And, you know, there's something very special about her story and the mission that she's on, based off of the personal experience of dealing with cancer. You know, there seems to come a point that we all hit where we face a situation that our backs are truly put up against the wall in order for us to find our strength and decide that we're going to willingly make a shift in our life to simply start living with intention, and the intention to not just survive, but take on and enjoy life and let our voice truly be heard. And I think that that is one of the most beautiful things that come across in this conversation, is how a moment that Fitz faced where she could have hung up her shoes and she could have just let everything go and let that be the end. But instead, she took a difficult and dark, challenging moment and she lived through it, and she learned how to redefine her voice. And I really think this is one of the conversations that you're going to truly enjoy based on the fact that it's such an open and vulnerable conversation that highlights how to find that healthy balance in life, as well as really truly discover how to utilize your voice. So on the flip side of this word from our sponsor, I give you my conversation with Fitz. All right, today's episode is brought to you by my friends at MyMedic. And when it comes to first aid equipment, this is the place to turn, because not only do you get the life-saving products, but MyMedic has also developed a life-saving course, a digital course that they offer for free when you purchase your kit, to make sure you're ready to utilize it in the moments that you need it the most. So swing over to mymedic.com, use promo code Project Outdoors 15 and save yourself on not only the life-saving equipment, but also the life-saving knowledge. That's mymedic.com and promo code Project Outdoors 2015. So, as you mentioned, you're a frequenter to the Metro Detroit area, so I know you kind of got an idea of where I'm at and how the environment is around here.
I do a little bit. I can't call myself an expert on Detroit, but I've certainly had some exposure to it, which I love.
And let's get into the motivation behind what brings you to the area. So let's talk a little bit first about the journey that ended up painting the picture and built the framework for what brings you here.
Yeah, so I come to Detroit and Michigan in general. I'm a professional sports host, race announcer. And so actually the very first race I announced alone without a partner was the Detroit Women's Half Marathon on Belle Isle. And since then, I've probably announced 20 different races. I've returned to Detroit about 20 times to announce running events. But it's very funny because before my first time on Belle Isle, I had one of the folks that I encourage and guide with fitness on the fitness side of my business. She said, I'm not sure if I'm coming. I got to see if my husband can come. He doesn't want me to go there without him. And in my mind, I thought, Belle Isle, who doesn't want to go there? I mean, it's an island. And in my mind, because I'm Floridian, islands always have steel drum bands and daiquiris. And who doesn't want to be there? And then she said, oh, no, it's very different. Although from what I hear, Belle Isle has been rehabilitated from its darker days, I guess. And it's always been beautiful to me. But I do enjoy Detroit. And I have such a passion for my runners, my athletes in Detroit or Michigan in general. And they seem to have an equal fondness for me. So when I go to Michigan now, I feel like I'm going home.
That's cool. That's one thing about Michigan is we are very embracing to the people that come and check it out. I mean, Belle Isle is a very beautiful area. And now that, it's been taken over by state programs and rehabilitated, they've got that really cool aquarium set up and everything. And they've done a lot of work as far as trying to make it more approachable and get rid of that background. They've tied in what they call the Iron Trail, now the Iron Bell Trail, which goes from Belle Isle all the way up to Iron Bell, Michigan. And it really showcases a lot of the beautiful scenery that the state has to offer, which is really cool. And, you talk a lot about the work of motivating people to get on a trail or, just get out and run in general. It's that physical fitness aspect of life that most of us feel like it's so caught up in the rat race, we forget that we have time to do. So that's where I think it really ties in beautifully to the initiative to put the Iron Bell Trail together. And I've been doing a lot of work with the wildlife refuge in the area to kind of promote it and help it out and things like that. So it's been fun. And I've seen the transition, and I really think about how it applies to the work that you do, in the sense of that not only physical transition, but that emotional transition that goes on by taking the initiatives in life.
Well, yeah, taking initiative, that could be the other name of my business. Besides Fitzness, it could be taking initiative, because I'm always telling people, control what you can when you can. I mean, there's going to be factors that, for example, last week, all my flights were canceled because of that CrowdStrike glitch. I had no choice. I tried to book other flights. They didn't exist. Oh, well, I had to put my hands up and not have a pity party over missing out on the event I was supposed to host. So that's knowing that I couldn't control that situation. But when it comes to my body and my mind, I'm totally in charge. And sure, life, goes sideways sometimes and things go wrong, and stress could become a real problem for me. But the second I identify something as a real stressor in my life, I do the things that I know are going to help me alleviate that pain, that frustration, and so forth. And exercise is number one for me. To be honest with you, basically anybody could go and do some form of exercise. A lot of people associate me with running. Love that. But I also dance. Other people dance. You play golf. You can play disc golf. You could do karate. You can just wrestle with your kids or wrestle with your dog. All sorts of physical activity is proven to vent stress and frustration. And so if you want to make your your mental health better right now, exercise should be the go-to. The other go-to that's proven time and time again is nature. And so you could be really crabby indoors, or you could go outside and be just slightly less crabby. And I think that's a win. So yeah, getting people to control their own factors, stop being victimized by society, by their employers, by their own bad attitude. And so yeah, taking initiative, get on it, choose what's going to work for you and do that thing.
The first step in that, though, you mentioned, is really taking control of the narrative. Instead of looking at everything through the eyes of, I'm a victim because this has happened to me or that's happened to me. And I really love in the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, where he talks about all the things that are terrible going on, happening to him. And then in the very next sentence, he turns around and he looks at it and says, it's not that. I'm very fortunate that all these things are happening, because it gives me an opportunity to showcase who I am inside. And through my journey, that was actually what changed my life, was during that perspective, because I was going through a bout where I just faced being homeless and everything was just really piling up. And I'm like, man, it's got to be over. This has got to be terminal. And then I heard, that frame of mind, and I'm like, it would really give me an opportunity to showcase to my kids, most importantly, the kind of person that I am and how to overcome adversity. And I feel like whether it's a fitness journey, self-help and self-growth journey, when you get out into the outdoors in the wilderness, you get to actually see the metaphors that we all talk about in play. So it really helps to build a narrative that takes away that victim mentality.
Well, you know what kills me? I think, Mike, you and I could look around society and we could spend days bemoaning all the victims, all the volunteer victims in our country. God save us. My gosh. I mean, it's tragic, right? But in 2019, I was diagnosed with cancer, and that wasn't a lot of fun. It was definitely very scary, very stressful. I've never known the stress that comes along with cancer before. It was inordinate. However, I had choices to make, and, perspective up until that diagnosis had always ruled my world. In fact, about 10 years prior, I was at a grocery store, Publix, where shopping is a pleasure. And I was in the 10 items or less checkout lane, and I was in a rush. And the woman in front of me, she was about 400 years old. She had 3,000 items on the belt, and she was paying with a check. And so you can imagine internally, I was combusting. I was stewing. I would have never made a grouchy face at this older woman, but in my mind, I was thinking, come on, I gotta go. And then I look over to the next checkout aisle, and there's a beautiful little girl in a beautiful little red, blue, and yellow shiny Snow White dress, and she had a very bald head. And I thought, yikes, what that child must be going through. And then I looked at her parents and thought, holy cow, what they must be going through. And so at that point, it felt very foolish for stewing over my long wait in line. And then I committed to never, ever having a fit over anything that fell short of being a child with cancer or having a child with cancer. And so my mantra after that I would say, it's not cancer. The dog vomited on the carpet. Okay, it's not cancer. I clean it up, right? Flat tire. It's not cancer. Clean it up. And then all of a sudden it was cancer. And so I was scared and I was stressed, and I really could have crumbled, and I certainly cried. I don't want to look like a robot. I'm not. But what I decided was, how fortunate was I that I wasn't a kid with cancer? And worst scenario on planet Earth would be that it was one of my kids with cancer. And so I decided to be grateful that I was a grown-up with cancer. And, I reminded myself of all the hard things I had done previously and all the hard things I'm capable of. And so perspective really ruled my world. And then I chose control. I chose to control what I could, kept going with my career, kept going as a mom, did everything I could, even though I was violently ill for a very long time. And if people are thinking, oh, you just didn't have it bad, I had 15 solid months of chemotherapy. I had 33 rounds of radiation. I had surgeries. Every iota of my body was obliterated in some regard. I was a catastrophe, and I had lost weight. My mom actually screamed at me one day, "You have to eat. You look like you're in the Holocaust." And I said, yeah, I know. I'm doing my best here, right? However, the thing that I never had amongst all the hardship was a why me moment. And the reason why is because 10 miles from my home at the University of Florida Hospital, there is a pediatric oncology unit. And so why them? Why is a 4-month-old going through care for brain cancer, And so why not me, right? And I think getting rid of that why me, oh, the victim cancer came to get me baloney. I had one cell go rogue. That's it. I don't think there's a God that planted a seed of doom in my boob. I don't think any of those things that people whine and say when they're stricken with something, it never pertained to me. In fact, I remember before my diagnosis, I used to wear pink ribbons and da-da-da-da-da. The second I became diagnosed, I became completely averse to pink ribbons. And I just was like, no, I didn't know why at first. It took me a while to figure out, but the pink ribbon makes me feel like a victim. So I will fight for the cause. I raise funds. I speak for the American Cancer Society and the Donna Foundation and the Young Survivors Coalition. I do all sorts of things to help promote research and support other breast cancer patients, but I will never voluntarily put that pink ribbon on my chest because that represents that I'm some sort of victim, and it just doesn't work for me. And I'm willing to go so far as to shun the pink ribbon. Oh my gosh, but those are decisions I make. And so everybody has to know when they're shutting down, when they're being a lesser version of themselves, yuck, turn that off, turn on the best version of you and get in your own head and talk yourself up. Instead of talking yourself down, you got to be your own best coach, your own best friend, your own best advocate. And life gets a lot brighter once you do.
That was one thing that really took a lot of time for me to wrap my head around, because I was always so used to going around and finding my value within the words, the labels, or the things that people would even give. And I love the reference there about the pen, because we all carry some sort of reminder, some sort of symbol that puts us in this place. But when you realize that that voice only goes so far and it's not truly serving you, that's where you start to find the power to advocate for yourself. And self-advocation is where that self-worth and self-value begins to grow.
I agree. And having some pride, right? I was on display because they kept working. And I never wore a wig. That was a personal decision. So I would show up to events and I would be bald and I would be gray and I would still be doing my job. But people would ask how I was. And even though sometimes it was just so bad, I would say I'm fine because it's ego, right? I didn't want anyone to know that I was being gotten the best of. And I certainly didn't want pity. That's already, you show up with your bald head, people are going to look at you and go, oh, Fitz, how you doing, right? But if I actually told them how I was doing, their head would have cocked all the way over to the side, broken their neck with the pity tilt, and I just couldn't stomach it. I think in a healthy ego is a really good thing for a person, and if nothing else, it forces you to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out.
I feel like having that ego as far as, expression, and I'm going to get through these things, is something that I've really had to tease out of a lot of people that I take on a trail. When I take a bunch of people out on a hike and, there's 7-8 miles from the trailhead to the finish, and about halfway through, you get to a staircase that holds about 150 stairs. They're turning around, looking at you with those eyes. I'm ready to go back to the car. And I'm going to give up because I don't want to climb all that after this. And you turn around and you just look at it and you say, you could go back, but that's 5 miles back that way. And you know what you've already gone through. So then it brings out that ego, like, I am this far along the way. I can persevere. And it's moments like that where we get into life and we experience those events that we strengthen that resolve. That resolve is what ends up bringing through, the motivation and all the different aspects that we need to rally around life-changing events.
I agree wholeheartedly. And that's one of the greatest uh, promotions for sports, for the military, is you don't win all the time, right? Things are hard. Things are challenged. People are better than you. You're going to lose. And you got to be able to lose like a champ too. And so, yeah, I think those habits, those skill sets learned in sports, in the military, are really those lifelong skills that benefit people in so many ways. I remember, there was a lot of things I failed at as a kid, beyond in sports for sure, but then beyond. I didn't get chosen for a couple of elections I ran for, and I didn't get this or that. And I remember coming home crying, and my mom would say, "It builds character," and I would say, "I'm enough of a character. I just want to be on a team, or I just want to do this thing." And thank God for all those failures, because those failures prepared me for my biggest challenge, which of course was cancer. And then once I got done with that, oh my gosh, everything on planet Earth is so easy right now. Everything. I was invited about a year later. Will you run the Boston Marathon? And at first I thought, I don't know. And then within a couple hours, I thought, well, yeah, definitely. Yes, I want to do that. I've never run a marathon before, but can't be any harder than cancer. And so as I trained, as I put in hundreds of miles in preparation, I was like, this is so much easier than chemo. Hooray. So it's all relative, right? And your failures, man, they pay off, and ideally they will lead to some major wins.
It's those failures that we all seem to brush off and we hang our heads on. We take it in the wrong context a lot of the time, because the lessons are within those failures. When we come up short, it's looking back and evaluating it. Yeah, it can be difficult to sit with yourself and, really explore what happened. But then the next time that you get out there, you realize that those muscles internally are a little bit stronger, that drive is a little bit harder, and you're going to propel yourself forward. So it's worth taking the time to really evaluate how you're going to view each and every time that you come up short.
So, Mike, you said you were homeless. How does that affect your life now?
In a lot of ways, I've never changed. Once I adapted to it, I've never readapted to a lot of the things that people call conventional norms. Beforehand, there was a lot of, I'd sit and I'd watch TV in the evening. I can't sit and watch TV now because I didn't have it for so long. Instead, I found other ways to entertain myself and build up different skills. And I can distinctly remember that feeling of worthlessness that I had, sitting in my truck at the end of the day and thinking, poor me and whatnot. And then I'd go out. In fact, the big changing moment for me was the first time that I launched my boat that spring. I had a boat that was big enough to fit in the back of my truck, so that's where it stayed. And the satisfaction of pushing offshore and looking back and realizing I just had a victory. Within all of this horrible stuff that's going around, I can find these small victories. And that's been how I started to change my perception. Now, from that point forward, it's always, this may be difficult, this may suck, but there's, for example, now sitting here, there's some beautiful green grass, or the sun's beating down on me right now, and it feels good. It's good to look at. And those are the little victories that I find every day in order to get that mastery to continue to grow that self-worth.
I love it. I love it. Well done. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's, to me, especially now where I'm at, helping other people to redefine themselves, it's the storytelling that comes based off of our experiences. You can pick up a book and you can read it from cover to cover, but you're not going to get the same context because it's somebody else's story. But as we walk through life, through an adventure together, it gives you an opportunity to not only hear the story that the other person has had, but now you're able to touch it and put it into context because you're living and sharing an experience. And those are the powerful moments that ultimately can change somebody's life, whether you're really considering that that's your mission or your objective or not, is you're bringing your story into a perspective that somebody else could touch.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? It's interesting. I listen to a lot of memoirs. I say listen. I listen do books on streamed, right? I want to download. I download books, so I listen to books. But I love learning from other people's mistakes. You know, my goal when I open up a book or download a book is just to get one golden nugget, something that sticks with me. And it could just be a laugh or a funny story. Sometimes it's one of those little things that I go, oh, I can take that and I can make something of it. My memoir is my noisy cancer comeback, running at the mouth while running for my life. And, you know, I put in all these little things that I hope would impact people. And it's really special when people come and go, oh, my perspective. I always think of that girl in the snow white dress and I never complain about anything. I don't get upset and when I'm stuck in traffic anymore or whatever. Those are things that just, you know, you hope your book is entertaining, right? You hope people enjoy the process. It's so funny. They get to know me during the memoir, but the purpose really is to help them. It's not like, who cares about me, right? Why am I relevant to them? But if my story can help them make their days better and prioritize health and fitness and so forth. But yeah, golden nuggets, always on the hunt for golden nuggets. Everyone's got something to share. They just got to figure out what that is.
Yeah, it was Seneca that wrote about that, how it's so important to just capture one thing every single day. That's how you know you're finding progress within your journey, is that one little seed. And then you really study it and you put it up for review by writing in a journal or meditating and reflecting on it one way or another. That's how it applies to changing that narrative from I'm the victim to I'm in control of my journey. And it's not fate that dictates what I do. So therefore I'm not grasping on to anything I can find out of desperation. I'm evaluating where my next footstep lies, because being the advocate of my journey and that autonomy means that I've got to select it.
So doubling down on that. So as a fitness pro, one of the most common things I deal with are people that want to lose weight, right? They're not happy with their body. Maybe it's overweight, maybe it's squishy or inflexible or whatever. They want to change their body. And so what I always tell them is that, okay, I want you to take off all your clothes. I want you to get naked at home in your own bedroom or bathroom, strip down and stare at yourself in the mirror. And whatever it is, know that you did that. You did that. You're 100% responsible for that. So if you look in the mirror and you think you're overweight, it's not your parents that were blamed. I mean, sure, maybe they gave you some crappy habits, but the amount of people that are actually overweight without their actions, genetically overweight, it's infinitesimal. Everybody has control, right? So if you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, know that you did that. You're not responsible for your height, but almost everything else is all you. And I want you to take ownership of your body at present, because only once you've taken full ownership of that, then can you realize that you have actual power. The power's within you to make it better. You can make the change. You're not saying, well, my grandma was obese, so now I'm obese. No, your grandma ate way too much of probably the wrong things, and now you're eating way too much of probably the wrong things. We're not blaming grandma. We're not blaming genetics. We're not blaming your income. There's a bunch of real trim poor people. It's you and your actions or lack of actions that are causing this. And so everybody should take, it's full responsibility for almost every part of you. It's an anomaly if you didn't cause it.
It's the accountability. And then it's also doing the research within to understand the effects that your decisions are going to have in the long term.
Yeah.
So if you're mapping out this goal of, I want to get to such and such place physically or emotionally, and you look at how each step is and the choices that you have to make, you got to take the time to understand how you're going to respond to them. And looking back at the fact that, not every decision we make is going to lead to success. We're going to have failures along that, and honoring those while celebrating the things that are successful that do change the story, because then you're starting to learn how to relieve the stress that you're putting on yourself about it. And you're opening up the door to the part of my wilderness hikes that I like to shine the light on is the adventure, the excitement of it. And then we're kind of stuffing into the bag all the other valuable life lesson aspects. Like me handing you a hatchet and saying, you can chop that tree down right there and you can build a shelter and you're going to feel really good about yourself afterward, is going to teach you that in the day-to-day life, when something comes up, you can find some kind of resource around you to do the same thing within the context of whatever you're facing and achieve that same exact feeling. And that's going to move that ball forward and forward and forward and strengthen all these things that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's the baby steps. It's the little decisions yield tremendous results. And within fitness, it's funny, some people say, well, I can't run a marathon. They want to lose weight. They want to get, okay, who cares if you can run a marathon? Nobody's asking you to run a marathon. What I'm asking you to do is aim to get 1% better tomorrow. So you're doing nothing right now. What makes you 1% better tomorrow? I don't know. If you walk your dog for 30 minutes, that's a good start. Let's say you can't do 20 push-ups. Fine. Do 1 push-up, do 1 squat, do 3 minutes of stretching. Okay, that's better than you are today. And then the next day, up the ante a little more. And as you continue on, the benefits will come, and they'll trickle in at first, and then they will come in like a tsunami. They will be unavoidable, undeniable, and you will have no choice but to brag to everybody about all the things you've done to get where you are right now. It's not so complicated. With fitness, people say, well, I just don't know how. I think the majority of people learned how in kindergarten. We just forget how simple it is. There's a bunch of really bad people in the fitness industry who sell pills, sell powders, sell diets, sell keto and intermittent fasting, and these diet bars and these diet shakes. All of that is garbage. It's watch what you put in your mouth. We know that there are foods that help versus foods that hurt. There are foods that help are fruits, veggies, seeds, nuts, beans, lean protein sources, lean dairy, whole grains. The things that hurt are fried foods, high sugar foods, foods with hydrogenated oils, lots of red meats, a little excess in that, alcohol, cigarettes. And so less of the bad stuff, more of the great stuff. I'm not telling anybody to go cold turkey on anything. What I'm saying is if 80 to 90% of the things you put in your mouth are good, it can be way better than if 50% of the things you put in your mouth are good. And then when it comes to exercise, there's really, you could get into the weeds, but we want people to work on their cardiorespiratory health. That's their heart and lungs. And that's any exercise that makes you huff and puff. Could be swimming, could be karate, it could be running. I don't care. Just whatever makes you huff and puff. Could be hiking. Works for me if it works for you. Strength. That's your body's ability to lift, press, push, pull against resistance. That makes you more resilient, right? That makes you less likely to have sprains, strains, and tears. And as we age, strength is a very big deal. You can see the older folks, when they start to curl over, they start to hunch. Those folks haven't been strength training when they're back. We can all be strapping for a very long time if we just put in a little effort, but strength is very important. It won't make you a bodybuilder. Saying if I strength train, I'll get big muscles. It's kind of like saying, if I go for a jog, I'll become a world champion marathoner. Those things aren't likely to happen. So cardio, strength, flexibility, that's your body's ability to move through its full range of motion or close to it. And if you're very mobile, you're again less likely to have those sprains, strains, and tears. And people feel pretty ridiculous when they pull out their back, putting on their socks. So you can avoid injury and feel better, because nobody likes having a stiff anything or almost anything. And then balance. We want balance training. And the reason we do balance training is so you don't fall down. And that's as simple as standing on one foot while you brush your teeth. So 4 pillars of fitness: strength, cardio, flexibility, balance. Watch what you put in your mouth, get some sleep, remove the cranky people, and all of your days will be better and better moving forward.
And I think I'd add to that something that I've experienced with working with people is if you can't laugh at yourself and enjoy the process, then maybe you're putting too much pressure. Because I can think back a couple of months ago, someone reached out to me about wanting to go on this huge hike, but they had never done any real hiking, let alone really any outside activity at all. They were scared. You know, I'm going to go outside of my house and there's going to be a bear. So I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? Let's get together, walk around a park. Just do something really simple, really stupid, laugh it off, have fun with it. And then you build it up, because you don't have to throw on like a 45-pound backpack and actually go walk, take out 100 miles or whatever, just because that's, you know, your ultimate goal and that's how you want to start. It's taking the time to enjoy the journey around getting there.
Yeah. I similarly promote athletic adventure. And so if you're going to plan a vacation, maybe plan it around doing something as opposed to eating everything. You know, people go on a cruise. I'm in Florida. So people are like, coming to Florida, they're going to get to one of our ports and they're going to get on a ship and they're going to try to get their money's worth in food. I feel like, well, you're never going to really get your $3,000 worth in food. But you could enter the lip syncing competition, or you could do a limbo competition, or you could go jet skiing in the Keys, or, you know, zip lining. Those are the things that you're going to make memories over. And those are the things that are going to make you laugh, because nobody goes on the ship and eats a bowl of rice and is like, ha ha ha, this is the best time I've ever had. And nobody, you know, reflects 3 years later on the rice they had at dinner. So athletic adventure, active adventure, just go out and do things that stimulate your mind, get your body moving, get you out in fresh air, something that's new and unusual. And if you're bad at it, great. That means you're stepping outside of your box. I love doing things I am bad at. It's one of my favorites. And if I fail, okay, it gives me another incentive to try again.
It's getting outside your box, though, that becomes the hang up so many times, because we get focused on the fact that we have to have control over every step. And if we don't know what's coming, we can't control it. And I think some of the greatest advice that I ever got was about that idea, was the fact that when it comes to the unknown, you don't have to know what the outcome is. You just have to set some kind of milestone that you want to achieve, something that you want to see, some kind of goal, but keep that goal within context so that it doesn't become so consuming that it becomes who you are.
So what inspired you to build your outdoor adventure hiking business? I think it's genius.
My adventure over the past 5 years of trying to rebuild my life after being homeless and finally accepting that I had a really bad problem with depression and with anxiety, and learning how to handle those things and tame all that. It led me to getting into talk therapy. And in talk therapy, one day, my counselor brought up the idea of meditation for sleep. And I've never had a good relationship with sleep. But through the conversation, I kind of, ducked and dodged around it. I was like, that's stupid. I'm never going to sit down and meditate. I'm not going to shave my head. I'm not going to pull out one of those 1980s champ CDs. I just can't do it. And then I went back around out to the shooting range afterward. I pulled out my crossbow and I'm like, man, this is everything I just spent the last hour listening to. So let me try to put the bow down and apply it. And as I did so, I thought about everybody looking around at me and pointing fingers, and made me feel really uncomfortable about that. So I thought about, next, where the safest place in the world I've known? That's the wilderness. The wilderness was where I started meditating and starting to do my thing along the journey, which then brought in all these ideas of old Native American spirituality and connecting with that. And through the way that it improved my life, and I started sharing that with other people, that's how this all came about.
And how did you decide to turn it into your business and make a living doing it?
I started out doing it as a podcast because I got a hunting sponsorship and it had the social media thing. And then from there, I started picturing I really wanted to do this, in person because meditation, hiking, it connects and resonates more in a face-to-face world. And then I came up against losing my day job. So
Okay.
it put me in a position where it was either be the victim and I continue to follow that whatever, go backwards, or I go forward and just chart this unknown path and start blazing this trail. And it's been a beautiful, exciting adventure that I'm grateful I had the courage to really stick my head up and take that path.
Yeah, I love it. I lecture for universities quite often, and I talk about creating a career. Create a career 101. How to work doing what you want, where you want, when you want, for the amount you want, with the people you want. Those are probably the stipulations, right? And I always encourage them, think about the things you love to do and how do you turn that into a livelihood, right? And so you love being outdoors and you love hiking and you love engaging with people, helping them sort their stuff out. Brilliant. I mean, you're going to be the guy I talk about when I go to hit the stage at the University of Florida next month. I'm going to talk specifically about you and how you turned something that was hardship into your career. It's spectacular. It's what it's the American way. That's the one we look towards. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is really kind of the pioneer mentality. And, I've drawn a lot of inspiration and influence off of one of my heroes, in Wound. It's funny because as I read about and learned about his story, I feel that social anxiety, without the label that we have nowadays, is what pushed him to helping pioneer America. And in a lot of ways, I've overcome that same sort of social anxiety and I've pioneered my way into an area that really no one's ever thought of or looked into. And yeah, there's been a lot of weird moments internally where I've struggled a lot with the idea of I'm taking somebody for a hike. This is my business. You're essentially paying me to walk through the woods with you. And you got to kind of step into this new perspective of yourself and what you have to offer the world. Because it's not the context of throwing a backpack on somebody's back and holding their hand and walking down a trail. It's the experience. It's the wisdom. It's the learning, the storytelling, the teaching, and all these other aspects that our world has this really difficult way of putting a value system around.
Question, were you in the military?
I was not.
Okay. You give off military vibes. I could see this being a really cool career choice for other people. I could see you kind of franchising your business, teaching other people how to do this, how to monetize it, providing them with marketing materials and guidance. I think it's a real winner. And I could certainly see some of our veterans coming home and doing that with all of the skills they learned in the military. If you I can't tell, I'm a big fan of the military, but it's a brilliant concept and you might be able to do even more with it, expand your impact.
Well, as far as I see it, the future is kind of the limit. There's no umbrella because there's nothing to put it up against. But one of the cool things I've had the opportunity to do locally is work with returning vets on post-traumatic syndrome, and helping them to let go of some of that stuff. And I've developed, because like I mentioned, a lot of the way that I present things and inspiration for that is based off of the old Native American ways and applying them to myself, because to do it directly would be a disservice to them considering my background. But there was an old Dakota practice that they would do after a war where they would put the warriors and would march them out from the town, and the medicine man would go around and do a little ceremony individually with the weapons. and all the people would gather around the village as well in order to help them to understand that they were doing simply what needed to be done and let those things go, as well as showing their gratitude for the fact that they went out and risked themselves and did these things in order to maintain their way of life. So it's really a lot of, the spirituality and the meditation, as well as the physical aspect of hiking, but all work together and presented in a way that is about the adventure and the celebration of life, and understanding that all of those things we're carrying, they were things that we did within the moment based off the vocabulary that we had. They don't define who we're going to become.
Yeah. Well, you've built something beautiful. It might go even bigger, Mike. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, people hiking all over this country and beyond.
Well, I appreciate it. Before I let you go, as our time starts to run down, though, you got to let people know a little bit about your work, how they can get in touch with you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm available at Fitzness.com. If anybody has any questions, wants to learn more or learn about themselves, Fitzness, that's FITZNESS.com. It's jam-packed with all sorts of free content, the weight loss, free workout videos, free recipes, free articles, all the things to help people live better and longer, to really enhance their own personal health. If anyone is part of an organization or an association that hires speakers, I'd love to come. I'd love to come to you, take the stage and poke everybody in the chest and fill your brains with all sorts of quality content to help you live better and longer. And I'm on social media at Fitzness on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. And I'm your friendly Fitzness trainer. I just, I really care about everybody, and if I can help you achieve more, that would make my life a little better.
It's that compassion and that authenticity behind the message that I feel connects with somebody in a way that's going to impact them. So it's been a pleasure to meet you, get to celebrate the journey as well as the work that we do. Next time you're in the Detroit area, we got to connect and do some hiking or something.
You know what? I'd love that. I sure will, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Thank you. This portion of Project Mindfully Outdoors is brought to you by Blackbeard Fire Starters. And as you know, I utilize Blackbeard on almost an everyday basis, whether I'm sitting around recording campfire sessions, or I'm conducting a meditative fire, or even out in the backwoods. Blackbeard Fire Starter is my go-to because it's trusted and it's reliable. And right now, if you swing over to blackbeardfirestarter.com and you use promo code Mindfully, you can save 10% on your entire order. That's blackbeardfirestarter.com, promo code Mindfully. Well, that's it. That's all. That's the end. We've reached the end of yet another edition of the Campfire Sessions. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in. I'd also like to thank Fritz for being so gracious with her time today. And if you'd like to see this conversation or any other edition of the Campfire Sessions as they played out, then just look us up on YouTube. That's Project Mindfully Outdoors on YouTube. and enjoy all the campfire sessions and much more. Until next time, my friend, get out there in the wilderness. That's where the stillness and the adventure lie. See ya.